A very good morning and happy Thursday. Welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. We got a great show for you today. We're covering the NBA. We got some SportsLine picks in college basketball and in hockey. We've got an NFL pick. We got soccer picks. I've got a golf pick. But first, we got to look at our picks from yesterday. And this is underwhelming. I keep repping how we have great recap screens over the last few weeks. Well, this is a bad one. We've got Darius Garland overhitting from prop stars, but everybody else took some L's, including Martin Green, Zach Simony, myself in that 3-ball. And of course, the SportsLine pick did not come in either. 1-5. This is a bad day. But again, over the last few weeks, these are few and far between. We've had some really, really good recap screens. So hopefully we can all sustain a 1-5, which admittedly is a very tough look on a Thursday. But we try to rebound with the stars of the show. We've got Mike McClure. We've got Buckets. We've got Mikey B. And gentlemen, I want to start with Mike McClure. Mike, we have fantasy football today, DFS at 11 o'clock today. You, me, and Meg Shop. We're going to talk about the championship games from a DFS perspective, maybe talk of a few props. But I got to ask you, because we haven't seen you in a couple days on the Early Edge, we've got these lines. They haven't really moved a lot. Washington is +6, and we've got the Buffalo Bills +1.5, +2 in some places. These seem like pretty efficient numbers. They've been bet to where they're probably going to stay. Any reaction to where these numbers are as we sit here on a Thursday?
I think it's about right. I think if you objectively looked at Buffalo versus Kansas City and maybe removed some of the past in terms of like Kansas City dominating and winning in those playoff situations, just looking at the product on the field, you'd maybe expect Buffalo to be the slight road favorite here, maybe -1, -1.5. So I think you're seeing a little bit of respect for Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and just the full body of work is why they are still a favorite. I think it's pretty clear that Buffalo on a neutral is probably a point to a 1.5 better. No doubt. And you can make the argument to 2. As far as the other game, I think it's really difficult to really see what's going on there, because when you look at Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, it's a rookie quarterback. He's had limitations throughout the year in terms of his mobility, just trying to keep him healthy. So it's really difficult to project where that team is. I personally think it's probably closer to 4.5 than 6 is where it should be. 4 being a pretty key number. I could get to it around 4. Definitely should be more than a field goal, but if I thought there was any value left at this point, it probably would be on that Commander's side, especially if you're getting a 6.5 anywhere.
Yeah, I think 6.5 is way too many points. Bucket, speaking of football, there was somebody in the chat, maybe multiple people in the chat yesterday, that reminded all of the Early Edge viewers and all of the people on the show that, and I could be wrong here, I'm looking at the color of Mikey B's shirt. And didn't you say that if Ohio State wins it all, you would paint your hair crimson? Wasn't that a thing that you said?
That doesn't sound like something I would do. I'm not the kind of person that likes to place external wagers on things like that, but I'll double check. If I can find proof of it, I can have that done by BPE tomorrow.
Well, you don't actually have to do that, but there were people in the chat that were reminding, you weren't on the show yesterday, were reminding us all of that. Mikey B, we want to finally get to some picks. First of all, how you doing today? Last time you were on, you were talking about how the NBA slate wasn't super attractive. They were just super huge spreads. And I know you have props today, but do we have a better looking slate today?
Yeah, much better. Lots of games. There are some back-to-back situations, which are always a little scary in the NBA. But we finally have a packed slate. Tomorrow is not going to be. I believe there's only 3 games tomorrow. So, Sia, let's try and cash in on this busy slate tonight with these 2 player props. First, we're going to go to the Bulls and the Warriors. Nikola Vucevic over 10.5 rebounds at -120. The Warriors are in rough shape up front right now. Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga are both out. Kevon Looney left last night's game against the Kings with an illness, so he's probably not going to play tonight. Even when they're healthy, the Warriors have struggled on the glass. They've allowed the 8th most rebounds per game in the league. This is a great spot for Vucevic. He's already grabbed at least 11 rebounds in 10 of his last 13 games. So we're going to take him to do that again here. And then we're going to go to the Mavericks-Thunder game. PJ Washington over 21.5 points and rebounds at -105. Derek Lively out for the Mavericks. He's expected to miss at least the next 2 months. Now, the last 4 games without him, Washington has recorded at least 22 combined points and rebounds in all 4 games. That included a game against the Thunder. He had 16 points and 7 rebounds. Back in November, Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein were both out in a game against the Mavericks. Washington had 27 points and 17 rebounds. The Thunder already allow the third most rebounds per game in the league, so they're going to play small. I would rather go with it. A lot of people might want to go Daniel Gafford here. I prefer PJ Washington over 21.5 points and rebounds.
Wow. Love the analysis on both of those, Mikey B. And we got a lot of people in the chat as well with their picks. I see Gipper's picks in here. Chris Kish is probably dishing out some knowledge when it comes to picks. I know Brad Betts is in here as well. Keep the picks coming. Hit the like button if you could. And Denver -7, says Rick Funcannon. And we've got KC3. Warriors stink. Bet against them from different angles. I like it. I watched some of that Warriors-Sacramento game. They were up kind of big the whole game, and then they just sort of gave it away late third quarter, early fourth. That team now finally seems quite undermanned. All right, Buckets, we're going to move to soccer. You've got a few plays for the pitch.
I do. I've got 3 Europa League plays for us all this afternoon, and it's a very tough day of Europa League because a lot of teams, frankly, I know we don't like hearing this, don't care about the matches today. We have some teams that are so far ahead, it doesn't matter if they lose. We have some teams that are so far behind, it doesn't matter if they win. So it can be a little tricky to find value, but I did my best to find us 3 winners here. And it's going to start with the matchup between Fenerbahce from the Turkish Super League taking on Lyon from Ligue 1. And right now, both of these teams are 2 teams that need to win. Lyon is currently 4th in the Europa League table, and they are fighting to stay in the top 8 to guarantee advancement to the next round, while Fenerbahce is 22nd, which means if they don't win, they might fall out of the playoffs altogether. These are 2 very good offensive teams. Fenerbahce, especially when playing at home, are an absolute dominating side, but Lyon have not lost in Europa League so far on the road. So 2 kind of contrasting teams here, but 2 very good offensive teams. I love goals in this one. Both teams to score by itself is -200. So to get that down, I'm adding over 2.5 goals to get it to -125. Second play, Manchester United versus Rangers. Again, 2 teams that need to win. 7 and 8 on the table, fighting to stay in those top 8 spots. But right now, as I've talked about multiple times on the show, I do not care who Manchester United are playing. You take the other team to score. BTTS is -130. It's a little bit of juice, but right now, if we took us 4, Sia, we could score against Manchester United. Defensively, they are just that poor at the moment. I love BTTS in this one. Third and final play, not much variation for me today, but that's okay as long as we see check marks. Lazio versus Real Sociedad, both teams to score at -110. Lazio are the best team in Europa League right now. They are top of the table, and they will rotate their squad because they are so far ahead. This game doesn't really matter that much to them, but for Real Sociedad, this game means everything. Sociedad with 10 goals scored in their 6 matches. They are 12th on the table. They need a win. Focusing on the teams that I know are capable of scoring here, Sia, I think we see BTTS in all 3 of these.
So the 4 of us on the field, Buckets, can win that second bet, that second game there?
I think the 4 of us could beat the $1 billion Manchester United squad right now. Maybe that's controversial, Sia, but I think we'd have a shot at least.
United is a dumpster fire. Easy tail, says Chris Kish. I've told you all on the show, I didn't play soccer at a high level at all. We're talking like grade school and middle school. It took a concussion for me to realize like I had no technique and no skill whatsoever. I was faster than everybody, so I was really good when I was young. No skill. I took a header, got a really bad concussion, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to call it. I'm not learning this game like I should. Let me just play some basketball from here on out. Speaking of basketball, we got a hockey and a basketball pick on SportsLine. We've got a lot of picks on SportsLine, including a lot of NFL picks that you're going to want to check out. But let's start with the hockey play. This is actually a model play. San Jose Sharks +1.5 at -130. That is courtesy of our SportsLine model. And then Bruce Marshall, he has Eastern Washington, which I could have sworn there was somebody in the chat that liked Eastern Washington earlier in this show. Eastern Washington -2.5 at -110. Again, that is courtesy of Bruce Marshall. A couple of SportsLine picks. We got a couple more picks to go. One from me, one from Mike. But don't forget about the longest touchdown jackpot, courtesy of BetMGM. Bet on a player to find the end zone and win a share of $250,000 in bonus bets if they end up scoring the longest touchdown of the week. A touchdown is always 6 points, but the longest one could mean you get $250,000 in bonus bets. Wager on any player to score during a game. If your pick has the longest touchdown of the week, you'll win big-time bonus bets on top of your wager. Here's how it works. Opt in to the longest touchdown jackpot promotion. Place a $10 plus anytime touchdown wager up to 1 eligible bet per game. If your player scores the longest touchdown of the week, you'll win a share of $250,000 in bonus bets. All right, like I said, we got to get to Mike's NFL pick. We got to get to my 3-ball, which starts in a couple of hours. We're going to do that right after this message from our partners.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale. Ronaldo! With the
Beautiful goal. On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, a couple of comments in the chat that I'm finally catching up on here. Michael Johnson says, Sia, any outrights to look out for in PGA? Mike, I don't know if you have any live outrights. I don't know that you tend to delve into that market. You know, this is a weird tournament. Today's a weird day, and I'm going to get to my 3-ball as I answer this question. There's going to be a lot of wind today, and I do think that kind of makes things a little bit more difficult to handicap on both the North course and the South course. Now, that could play to some advantages in terms of actually taking a live outright. I'm going to wait until after today. Maybe, to your question, maybe I'll have a live outright for the show tomorrow, along with a 3-ball or a matchup. My 3-ball today is Aaron Rai plus 120 over Harris English and Matt Naismith. I put SC there because I want you all to know it's on the South course. That is the harder course. Again, this is going to be a wind-affected day. The winds are going to be in like the 15-mile-per-hour sustained, but the gusts could be up to 25, 30 miles per hour at parts here. And that's going to be a problem for those on the South course. But the handicap here isn't that Aaron Rai's better in the wind. I think Aaron Rai and Harris English are both good wind players, both, pretty good around the green. But Harris English's play, and I'm keeping Matt Naismith out of this because I really don't think he's a contender in this 3-ball. Harris English's play around the green and with the ball striking, particularly on approach, has been really bad for quite some time. He is typically pretty good on difficult courses, typically pretty good with the short game, but it's been a while. I'm not just dating back to the fall swing. I'm talking about basically all of 2024. The game just wasn't there, and Aaron Rai has been playing really well. The ball striking has generally been there, and the short game is generally there for him as well. So I think all things are kind of clicking for Aaron Rai, whereas they're not for Harris English. And again, Matt Naismith, particularly on the South course, I think Naismith is a relatively short hitter here. And the South course is a really long course, 7,700 yards, 7,600 yards. I just don't think he can contend with these two. So I'm getting plus 120 on Aaron Rai over English and Naismith. I'm going to go ahead and take that plus money. So that is my round 1 3-ball. Round 2, 3-ball. It's Thursday, but it's day 2. If you have any picks that like maybe this isn't on your site for some reason, most 3-balls are present at most major books. Feel free to tweet at me. Let me know if you have a matchup or a 3-ball that you are interested in. By the way, shout out to Ben, our producer. There it is. Oh my God. Me and Ben are like on the same wavelength. I didn't know he was going to bring Mark Hood's comment up here. I really didn't. He said, I'm really enjoying SportsLine's new graphics on the show. Well, gentlemen, ladies, that's courtesy of Ben. So somebody give a shout out to Ben in the chat. Good job, Ben. Welcome to the team, Ben. Whatever you want to do, put that in the chat while you're hitting the like button, because Ben has been a great addition to this show. We really appreciate all the work he has put in. And Mike, you're always putting in a lot of work. And you're actually going to the NFL. You're going to the Chiefs-Bills game, and you're attacking a team total.
I am saying it's a familiar play for a lot of you throughout the season on the early edge. We look for really good offensive teams in a first half number that they hang 12.5 instead of 13.5. 13 becomes an extremely key number. You can now cash a ticket with a touchdown and 2 field goals. That is almost always going to be appealing for the Kansas City Chiefs, particularly when playing at home. Now, when I look at this matchup with Buffalo, we know what it is. We've seen this matchup time and time again. It's typically one where we see efficiency. We see both teams scoring, driving down the field, and really getting their way offensively for the most part. So the fun question I have for you, Sia, which I'll answer it because I am on a solo shot here. Who's the worst defensive team in the NFL in the playoffs remaining? It is the Buffalo Bills. When you look at the Buffalo Bills since week 11 in terms of EPA per play, they're the worst team remaining, and it's all because of the passing. They've been stout in the run game, but they have not been good in the passing game. They've been essentially 29th in the NFL since week 11 in terms of EPA per play. Or EPA per drop back. That is a problem when you're playing Patrick Mahomes with healthy weapons. I think the Chiefs ultimately either score 13 or 14 in this first half. Again, it's a touchdown and 2 field goals. We thought that this game being in late January, you might have some weather issues. I don't think we have any weather issues here, and that's kind of evident by the total. So as far as late January goes, extremely mild. Give me Kansas City here. Over 12.5 in the first half. This number should be 13.5.
Mike, I don't know why I feel this way, and it might just be because I've tried to fade the Chiefs over the last few years, and I've not gotten it right when it comes to the playoffs. I think the +2, I'm leaning to the +2 on the Bills, and that doesn't necessarily conflict with your team total here. I don't know that I have a great analysis behind it. I do think the Chiefs just generally don't look like the same Chiefs. I know you said this is an efficient number, but am I crazy to like the Bills +2 here?
I don't think you're crazy. Honestly, I have Kansas City. Let me see if I can pull up my number exactly where I have it, but it's very efficient. I make Kansas City -1.5 here. Total in my sim is 47.3. So we're essentially dead on.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think you're crazy for liking it. Again, at the top of the show, we kind of mentioned, I think that this is a spot that if we weren't giving so much credit to what Kansas City has done over really the last 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
This line would be -1.5, much like we saw Baltimore favored on the road against the Buffalo Bills. That's what I thought we would potentially see here, but I think we're not, because everyone's tired of watching Kansas City win and watching them get it done. Again, on a neutral, the Buffalo Bills are the better team right now. What I think happens in this game, which is why I like Josh Allen rushing, whether it's touchdown or yardage, for better or worse, Josh Allen is tired of losing this matchup. He's going put the game on his shoulders. He's going to run more. The question becomes that, is there a fumble? Is there anything trying to simply do too much that could be the difference in the game? I'm still going to lean Kansas City because of Andy Reid and that home field advantage that I think is really big when it gets to a postseason game like this.
Yeah, a lot of comments on this game. Josh Allen, one thing he hasn't been doing really is turning the ball over, and he has been putting the game in his hands. This is going to be such an interesting game. Both of these games are super interesting. Eddie Cotto says Mike is the best capper of all time. I mean, that's not a bad take. You're too humble, Mike. But honestly, everybody, anytime you open your mouth, I think everybody's super dialed in. So appreciate all your analysis, even when they're not on official picks. Buckets and Mikey B, I want to come back to you to see if there's anything in the chat that you needed to respond to with soccer or the NBA. There was something. Oh, there was a question about 3 balls and whether or not, I think it was from Mark Buckholtz, whether or not you're lowering your unit size. I would highly recommend that, frankly, because especially when you're looking at a +120, sometimes I'll give you a +130 or +150 3 ball. I don't usually put a full unit on those because they're 3 balls, and we need to acknowledge the potential volatility of especially that third person just having a great round. So usually I like to zero in on matchups as full unit plays, and sometimes I don't give you a matchup because there's just not a lot of head-to-head offerings in the middle of the tournament. Sometimes there are, and it varies from sportsbook to sportsbook. So it is a little frustrating in that sense, but nonetheless, this is a 3 ball that I just gave you that I am confident in. But admittedly, mostly because it's +120, I'm not putting a full unit on. I think you put a half a unit, 3/4 of a unit, and I think that would be just fine. Brad Butt says, Sia, would you just play Rye -140 over English in a matchup? Ooh. It's so close. The -140 is a little steep. But yeah, listen, I don't think Matthew Naismith is really going to factor in. I really don't. He hasn't been good for quite some time. So I'd rather take the +120 in the 3 ball. I don't hate that look, though. Buckets, was there anything soccer-wise we needed to cover?
There is, real quick, a reminder, there are 32 different teams playing in Europa League today, and after looking at the matchups, I would guess more than half of them are going to rotate their squad, so I heavily would encourage people not to bet player props until you see lineups, because a lot of these teams that have kind of the big-name players that always score might not be playing, and I don't want to see people get stuck with a ticket when a guy only plays 15 minutes in this matchup.
All right, Mikey B, anything on your end?
Yeah, a lot of questions about Victor Wembanyama overs because they're in France today. I don't mind it. If I'm going to play a Wembanyama over, I would probably take the over on his blocks because you can probably get some nice odds for that. And he's obviously a defensive presence. And also one other thing I want to mention, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Vucevic. Because the Warriors are going to be so shorthanded up front, Trace Jackson-Davis is going to play a lot. The Bulls outside of Vucevic are a bad rebounding team. So once those props come out, look for over rebounds on Trace Jackson-Davis. That's another thing to look for.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to translate much into the NBA from Indiana, if I recall. He plays well. He had some really nice plays yesterday against Sacramento that I saw. Let's see. Bitsy says, Sia, would you run back Ben Griffin over Trey Molnax and Rico Hoey? That was the lean I gave you yesterday. You might have cashed a little bit on that because that was a +130. We had a tie at the top, so you got some money back, but it wasn't much. I would lean that way, Bitsy. It's certainly not an official play for me. By the way, Danny Brasco's in the chat, and he says, I'm not ever betting against Patrick Mahomes again, and he called Patrick Mahomes a witch, which frankly is a compliment, and it might actually be true. Let's see. There we go, Danny Brasco. Is there anything else? Bring back.
Yeah, I got a
Harmon's
golf
team.
comment.
Go ahead.
So I know a lot of people love matchups, three balls, things like that. One market that I like betting in golf is still individual round scores where you can isolate truly just one individual. So sometimes if you're looking to back, someone that Sia maybe giving in a three ball and the juice gets out of control a little bit and the price point, you can start to pivot and look at individual round score matchups where you're just simply betting on that guy to perform well. And then in a case like today, where you get harder courses and windier conditions, because we all love to bet on good things happening, there's actually generally a pretty good amount of value in just picking a massive chunk of golfers and betting over on round scores in those conditions. So you can find those on pretty much every book now.
Yeah.
I generally like to look for some of the overreactions from round 1 to round 2 in individual player round scores.
Yeah, and I think that's under round props at most books. And that's a market, Mike, that I haven't really delved into. I know a lot of other people have already as of a year or
They
two
move
ago.
a lot. So that's the thing you have to be, which is great if you're on top of it. If you can forecast weather, if you can forecast some of the conditions or have a good idea of it, you'll typically lock those in, say like 7 a.m. this morning. And by mid-round, if you're an afternoon guy, based on how the performances are happening on the course, those numbers will move by a full stroke and juice in a lot of situations. So you can put yourself in a really good spot.
It's that type of analysis that you'll hear at 11 o'clock when me and Mike and Meg are on Fantasy Football Today DFS on the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel. Check that out because, Mike, that's going to be such a lineup construction, contrarian type conversation because we only have the 2 games. We have a lot of popular players there. So how do we construct our lineups, things of that nature? We're going to be talking about that at 11 o'clock. Let's take a look. Buckets needs red hair or we riot, says Jeff Stenberg. Would love to take a look at that. But first, let's take a look at the recap screen before we get out of here. A lot of picks today. Aaron Rye plus 120 over Harris English and Matt Naismith. That's over on the South Course today. Round 2, 3 ball. Mike McClure, Sunday. Chiefs, first half team total over 12.5 at minus 110. Mikey B, Nikola Vucevic over 10.5 rebounds at minus 120. And PJ Washington over 21.5 points and rebounds at minus 105. Buckets, Fenerbahce versus Lyon, both teams to score plus over 2.5 goals at minus 125. Man United versus the Rangers, both teams to score minus 130. Lazio versus Real Sociedad, both teams to score minus 110. SportsLine picks, San Jose Sharks plus 1.5 at minus 130. That's a model play. And Eastern Washington minus 2.5 at minus 110. That is courtesy of Bruce Marshall. What a great show. What a great show. We had so much participation in the chat, so much great conversation throughout the show. Thanks to Mikey B, Buckets, Mike McClure, and of course, Ben on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s doing such a great job. Thanks for being a part of this show. Maybe we'll see you at 11, but we'll certainly see you tomorrow morning on the Early Edge, folks. Have a great day. We rest our case.